Well, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're getting into the final hour, actually in the final half hour before the weekend begins, but there's a few things you still need to know, so we'll run you through that. The East African community, whose main aim is regional integration, is today commemorating 20 years of existence since inception.
But is there much to celebrate? The bloc has been marred with delays in implementation of some of its top plans. Now, our very own reporter Dennis Otieno is at the event. Dennis, it's great to see you. 20 years of inception. What can they say that these are some of the great grand things that they've been able to do?
Better U.S. relations.
A very good morning to you, Trevor and Zinzi there in studio. Yes, indeed, the East African community is commemorating 20 years of its existence. And of course, the main issue has been what have been the achievements that have been achieved so far, looking at this particular bloc. Indeed, there have been quite a number of challenges that all the member states have been facing throughout, but today they are celebrating 20 years in existence. And I'll just hear from the Cabinet Secretary, Aden Mohamed, just to tell us more about the significance of this particular day and what it is that they'd like to achieve by commemorating the 20 years that the EAC has been in existence. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us what are the milestones that EAC is currently seeing?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, we are celebrating 20 years of the new East African community, if you like, that has been in place since 1999. Compared to the first EAC, if I may call it that way, that only lasted approximately 10 years, this 20 years is a significant achievement for us to stick together, to be able to invite and accommodate new members, Burundi, Rwanda, and most recently Southern Sudan, is first of all important. We have been able to bring through EAC 160 million people. That is probably one of the biggest markets within the Africa's regional economic blocks. What that does is it helps businesses, especially manufacturers, to go beyond their small population. And probably the highest is Kenya, which has been about, approximately 48 million people. Now we have access to 160 million people without having to pay any duties. So that is significant. And I think what is more important is for us to reflect back and now look at the future. The world is becoming much more competitive and advantages are being eroded significantly. Technology is making natural barriers to disappear, to be cut out, and we just want to make sure that we have access to markets. And that I think is important. EAC has been built on 4 pillars. One is the customs union. We have been having customs union in place now for approximately 15 or so years. It is working. We have one common external tariff within the EAC, and that means a lot for the private sector, especially the manufacturers. We also have the common market in place where movements of people, movements of goods and services is happening. We also have plans to have monetary union, to be able to see East Africa to be one monetary union where we'll have one currency, one monetary policy that would make us much more integrated from a financial services point of view. Institutions and foundations to make that happen are well underway. A monetary institute is being set up very soon. And that will just make it possible for us to one day be able to have one currency along the, within the countries. And finally, the political federation, which is the ultimate goal, to have EAC countries to be part of one political federation, is also a journey that has been started. We have President Museveni, who has been asked by his colleagues in EAC to champion that cause, and we have 2 members of experts from each country to make sure that the foundation and views are being collected to see how we can bring that federation into place.
Buenos Aires, even as we speak over these particular milestones, we've seen quite some sharp differences amongst several member states. Rwanda with Burundi, Kenya at some point with Tanzania, and of course Uganda too having it. I mean, are these differences delaying the integration process?
Well, if you can have differences within a family, I think to have some differences of points of views and issues of sovereignty between sovereign states, it's not entirely unusual. What I think is important is how these issues are being resolved. And you will hear, and media obviously pronounce those kind of differences much more, but the gains that we have been able to get over time in realizing the benefit of this integration and this common market has been immense. EAC, for example, for Kenya remains the #1 market, trading partner, and that will remain that for a very long time. We want to see how we can build on that. I think 20 years has provided some good lessons on things that needs to be improved on, worked on. Today I can fly to Uganda, Rwanda, using my national identity card and vice versa. Today I can make a local telephone call out of Uganda and Rwanda without having to pay roaming charges. These are positive steps. We have probably one of the most busy travel corridor from Mombasa through to Kampala into Rwanda. This is what is commonly referred to as the Northern Corridor, a big infrastructure program. The SGR has just reached more or less halfway up to Naivasha to be able to see how we can do the integration into the rest of the region. So I think to reflect, take a step back and say, look, what do we need to do? What do we need to learn from the last 20 years is a very, very important step to take. And that is why we are here. And I think the private sector can attest to some of that.
All right. We'll just listen briefly to Mr. Nick Nexbit of the East African Business Council. Kindly, on the business front, are we where we are supposed to be in terms of business?
Thank you very much. As chairman of East African Business Council, I would say that we're not where we need to be yet, but we're heading in the right direction. We've set the right compass as to where we have to go. I'm really encouraged that after 20 years, over the last few years, let's say 2 to 3, 4 years, we've made significant strides. The business community is pleased on several fronts. First of all, from a relationship standpoint, we have been invited by all the different presidents, all the different ministers of EAC to engage directly with them, which is seemingly small, but is very monumental. What this has meant is that our voices are being heard by the senior policy makers. Additionally, from a relationship standpoint, we built a very good relationship with the legislators in Arusha. The gentlemen and ladies who run the East African Legislative Assembly are listening to what business needs. So the relationship part is good. From a process standpoint, we have regular engagement now with both the political side and the legislative side, which means that we have constant engagement with them on what our issues are. What that has led to is the third area where I'm encouraged is around outcomes. If you ask the manufacturers in Kenya, in Tanzania, and Uganda, many of the challenges that we have, let's call them in our language, non-tariff barriers, have been drastically reduced. It is much easier to move your goods across borders than you could ever have imagined before. And we are seeing the benefits of what has been recently launched, which is the one-stop border posts. We're seeing the benefits of that in that the goods are moving clearly and swiftly across the borders. When I say those three areas, relationship, process, and outcomes are positive, I also say there's a lot of work still to be done. We must make it cheaper to fly and cheaper to talk and cheaper to communicate across the region.
All right, Nzinzi and Trevor, before we just wind up, let's just hear a word or two from Manu Chandari, who has been at the forefront also in ensuring that the country's manufacturing sector gets to improve. Bona Manu.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I'm very thankful that I'm seeing this day. 20 years back when I started, with the help of Ambassador Mutaura of East African Community, to set up East African Business Council, it has flourished. I never thought that I'll live to it, but I am. So to me, it's a step toward the biggest market that we can win. Now all we got to do is just get out in our heads, at least the heads of the states, must understand and realize that better we are together than separate. I run a business family. We have 50 members. There are always going to be a difference of opinion. But then let's agree to disagree. But let's agree for what is good for our country.
Thank you so much.
Things will go well.
Thank you so much. All right, and Zinzi, there you've had it. The members attending this particular celebrations of the EAC 20 years commemoration indeed are exuding confidence. And indeed, despite the challenges that have been around, they are saying that quite a number of milestones have been made. And though there are a bit of differences here and there between some member countries, they believe that those are just teething problems, and that all these countries will get over these particular challenges. What I didn't mention earlier on is that members of the East African Legislative Assembly are also expected at this event to give a word or two. Zinzi and Trevor, back to you in studio.
All right. Thank you so much, Dennis. Dennis there, who is attending the East African community as they commemorate 20 years.